Hey, welcome back to the Marketer of the Day podcast. We are here with return guest Stephen Christopher from witdelivers.com, and we're going to be talking about all kinds of interesting things, from what your website needs to be doing, what you should be doing with your business and your life without it getting taking over your life, and to basically do the things that you know that you need and should be doing. So Stephen, glad to be talking to you again.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Thanks, Robert. I appreciate the invite back again. I must have said something halfway decent to get to come back on again.
Yeah, I mean something like we both have so many things coming and going. Who knows what was even happening yesterday or last week or with that person, but that's good, right? Like the chaos is good. And as long as it's kind of controlled chaos, or as long as we know what we're doing. And just before we hit record, you were talking about how it's important to build a business that does not become like a job times three. And it's really easy to kind of get pulled into something or to embark on a path, and then you get so caught up in the day-to-day that you don't even know who you are anymore. You don't even know where you're headed, and it's definitely not the place to be. So, I mean, since this has been on your minds lately, what have you been doing the last 6 or 12 months? What have you been doing to avoid or maybe solve this really common problem that a lot of entrepreneurs have?
Yeah, I mean, I got to the point where I started to get burned out, right? Like a lot of entrepreneurs, I think, do. We can run at this certain pace, and most of us tend to have a lot of willpower, so we can push through times of uncomfort. I think better than most. But what happens is eventually we start to get burnt out, and so I just started asking the question of, what do I really want this to look like, and started to have a better intention of, what's my desire either within the business, or what do I desire more for my life, and then set out to create it. I mean, I had no clue how I was going to create a business that for so many, for the previous 5 years, I had been the primary driver of and run it to something where my goal was to be able to be completely out of the business. And so I spent about 2.5 years working with our leadership team, developing leaders, getting, the role of CEO transferred off of me and onto somebody else that wanted it and was desiring it, and then just slowly put it into place. And man, I'll tell you, it's been a really interesting experience, because there's so many things that I ran into that I didn't think I would. Like, I didn't think my identity was that tied up in the business. I thought I had pretty good separation and some decent self-awareness about why I was doing what I was doing. But as I had less and less responsibility, I would find myself being stressed about, like, man, what is my role? Like, geez, the business doesn't even need me. Like, where's my value? Did I do anything right? Like, was my whole last 5 years building this specific company just a sham? Like, do I even know anything? So I had all these kind of crazy things starting to come up that I had to deal with those. And I processed through those pretty well. And then now I'm starting to go back into the business in a very, very small role, way more on the vision side, a little bit on the relationship building side, but it's all things that I want to do, and the coaching side. And that's been really fun. So I think just having some sort of an intention or some sort of a desire, you don't have to know exactly how you're going to do it, but you at least need to know kind of the direction of where you want to go, and then just start walking. Find a lot of good resources.
And that's really interesting that about this concept that, like, your business, especially when you start it, it's like an expression of who you are. And then when it outgrows you, or you outgrow it, or like you're saying, like you're doing too much and you're getting burned out, and you have to maybe like detach yourself from it and then let things settle and then come back. It seems like a real, like a personality identity crisis. Just you kind of pulling yourself out of that business. And probably the last 6 or 7 months, I've gone through something similar, of just like being overwhelmed with, like, I'm doing all these things, but I'm even more overwhelmed with the thought of not doing these things. So I felt like kind of stuck in both places, and then slowly every week just shredding off these little shards, I guess, of all these tasks I was doing, and then like feeling like lost in some of these similar ways that you're talking about, and feeling almost guilty for not doing the work, but then in another way, also feeling even guiltier for doing the wrong work all this time, doing all like the low paying work, so to speak, when I should have been doing more of the high level stuff that you're talking about. But it just seems like this is almost like a months, years long process, even just getting our heads wrapped
Oh,
around it,
dude.
just in the way you describe it and the way it's making me think of things.
Yeah, it's a really long process. Even I think if you've done something similar before or know what you're doing, it just takes some time. I mean, I thought I was doing this in a previous business that I'd started and built over like 6 years, and man, I wasn't even close. And so now I get to take another stab at it. And I'm sure in 3 or 4 more years, I'm going to find all kinds of other things that I was like, oh man, like I didn't even see that, or I didn't even realize that was happening. So I mean, it's just life, man. It's a never ending, evolving process of learning, right? Like there is no finish line in life. There's only milestones that we hit. So how many milestones we hit is up to how willing we are to lean into, I like to call it the exciting unknown. So how willing are we to grow, and how willing are we to lean into the exciting unknown? That's how many milestones we end up getting to hit.
And so to help us understand this, was there something specific that happened along the way? Like, was there a specific thing that made you do this? And as far as the surprises of like kind of reimagining all this, was there something specific that like you didn't know that was important, or like were there any like moments or like ideas like these that came about?
Like when I decided and said, hey, I want to be out of the business, like kind of that moment. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that can work. I'm just thinking like if it's more appropriate to talk about like what like the breaking point or the coming back and like any aha with that, or just something along those lines.
Got it. Yeah. So the breaking point was I was just tired of doing the same thing over and over again every day to grow the business. And I knew that I kept feeling pulled that there was like something more, right? I was like, all right, man, like this is not what I'm meant to do for the next 5 years of my life. And so I kind of went on this journey, right? This seeking journey to find something else. So that point was like something was pulling me, and I would wake up every day and I'd be like, dude, this is not it. Like this is not, like there's something bigger or something else that I have to contribute, to learn, to offer. And that's what started me on that journey. So that journey was a journey of learning in itself. Um, and then the decision to kind of come back into the business, that was twofold. I mean, there were some little things within the company that needed what I was really great at. And so that was one piece. It was like the business needed something, and I had that skill set, and I liked to do it. And so I worked with our CEO, and I was like, all right, how do we do this without me stepping on toes and creating more issues? Because we spent a long time with me creating a lot of issues. Uh, well, I created a lot of issues, right? The owner creates all kinds of issues. So the coming back in was partially that, and then just partially after I had been separated for a year to a year and a half, I was like, great, I'm kind of bored. Like what the hell am I doing here? Like I had a couple little side things that I started and just was playing with, and I'm doing some business consulting with a friend after she sold a big law firm. But I just recognized, okay, great. Now I have some more clarity about what things I actually desire from my life and what things and skills I have to be able to contribute. So I started to smash those together and say, great, is there a need for those and a fit for me specifically at WIT, that I can help with, that I'll get fulfillment of and enjoy? And there was. And so that's how I decided to go back in there. Uh, and that's just kind of how I would look at all projects now, of what is it that I'm great at? What are my couple unique abilities? And what's this kind of bigger why that I enjoy out in the world? And do they all align? And go for it, give it a try, right? Like we don't know until we try it. So test it. We always have choice. We can always stop doing it. I can always leave WIT completely. I can always do whatever I want. But we'll never know until we try it.
And that right there, that's something that I think for a long time I was like doing it without thinking without realizing it, but then began doing it on purpose, is the whole like make the test case, right? Like do the proof of concept. And it's so frustrating dealing with like if you have a friend and they have an idea or they want to do something and you say, well, just do it on a small scale, or like just take the first couple of steps, or just spend a week on it or spend 30 days on it. And it's so easy to get caught up in like daydream land, and you don't even know if this idea or this product or this offer or whatever it is will even like pan out. Like it doesn't mean it's
Yeah.
nothing to do with you. It's what everyone else wants. And so when you're explaining kind of this journey, this thought process, what also comes to mind is that whole concept of like it's easy to give someone else advice, or it's easy to tell someone else how to decorate their room, but then it's so tough for your own. And so it's like those two ideas are sort of connected. And so when you're explaining how like you left and came back, it almost feels like that whole concept, like it's almost like you got like Wit became your coaching client almost, right?
Yeah.
In that you had something else to jump in that was already working and was maybe doing things even without your origination. And then you said, well, now that I see it from the outside looking in, now I can jump in and kind of tweak things and make it better, and be the guy once again that causes the problems.
Yeah. Yeah. And like the way I'm coming back in is, Wit didn't really have, Wit doesn't really have any problems, right? It has some opportunities, and I can fill those, those gaps where there's an opportunity with that skill set. And so now coming back in, I have to be very conscious of what is my role, right? And so granted, I am the owner of the company, but that's a role that sits way over here. I don't have to do anything to be an owner, right? Like you just own it. So you don't have to do anything. So now I have to kind of redefine what is my role and what is not my role. Because people do listen. The owner can say something and it carries a little bit more weight in some instances, right? So like in passing, I can accidentally say something that was just a thought off the top of my head, and somebody could actually take it and run with it as, oh, well, Steven said to do this. And my CEO actually really helped me see that, because I was like, oh no, like nobody, I'm good with everybody. Like we're all on the same page. Like we're all equal. And she's like, look, I know that you want to think that it's that way, but it just doesn't quite happen that way. She's like, you've got to be aware of that. So she really helped me see how impactful some of those things can say. So I think as an owner in a business, you have to be a little bit more conscious about what is your role, and kind of staying in your lane and being very careful about what it is that you say around others. How you have conversations can be interpreted a little bit differently. And that was a big awareness piece for me.
Well, what I'm hearing from you saying that is it's about boundaries, right? Like
Yeah.
it's if you don't have any sets of boundaries, then you might be too much one day and not enough another day, or second guessing or stepping on someone's toes while at the same time almost not doing enough. And like that's been
Yep.
on my mind the last like maybe 1 or 2 months, especially. It's like in any kind of relationship, right? Not even just limited to coworkers, but just like people in your life. Like what are your boundaries? And mostly, I mean, just in your boundaries aren't even really to protect you as much as like just to protect them, right? If
Yeah.
like you said, if you're like running your mouth, that's probably a better way to say it, but just like
Yeah.
spitballing, and then but you're unknowingly like gumming up the works for someone else, or having someone go and do some other task. It's like that whole idea of like being careful about what you say, and or like even like treating it like you're being recorded, and like having like respect and like all these things that it's easy to say in principle, but then like in practice, like you figure out what those boundaries are, what those zones are, and then now it's like now you can focus on what, like you said, like what your passion is and what your greatness is, without being putting out everyone else's fires and neglecting
Yeah.
your own. And so you say that you come back as you're always the owner, but then you came back as kind of almost like you like made a job title for yourself. So like what sorts of things are you doing? What's your job role in Wit these days?
Yeah, so right now we're kind of finishing redefining this. We've been going through this process over the last few weeks called reimagining the company, right? So we've been reinvigorating certain things into it, like more purpose and more, getting more information and input from the leadership team about what is the vision of the business. What do we all want? Not just, what do I want the vision to be? I want a more cohesive, collaborative vision. So as I'm coming back in right now, as we do this reimagination exercise, there's, one of my skill sets is the ability to connect with people. And so some of these bigger relationships within the industry that we desire to impact, we're specific to the home service industry as far as marketing goes. And there's a lot of really cool relationships that are available to be built in that industry. And so now I get to come back in and build some of those, rebuild some of those with this new kind of vision of who WIT is and what we are in the market, which it is marketing, but it's marketing with a purpose. And so we're coming back in with this slightly reinvigorated purpose. And so now I get to go out and do what I'm great at, which is just build relationships and talk to people and have fun, and talk to them about, hey, here's what we're doing. Maybe it's a fit for you or whatever. That's not even a big piece of it. But my goal is to use this position to build relationships, which will naturally grow the business, which helps in sales a little bit, which is another thing that I'm good at. But I think more importantly, what it'll do is it'll help these other people be inspired by what we're doing and maybe bring a little bit of that into their company. Because some of these people that I build relationships with, I mean, they're giant, multi-$100 million a year companies, even some up into the billions. So they have this massive ability to create impact within communities or within industries. And so if we can show somebody what we're doing that's different, and they can bring that into their company, and then they can have a deeper impact on their community, that's awesome. So that's a lot of what I'm doing. I mean, there's some stuff on the marketing side, like content creation. I mean, dude, I love being on podcasts and like having these types of conversations and creating Facebook videos and sharing information and knowledge and what's working and what's not working. Like, that's fun for me. And yet it serves a need at the company. So they tend to put me on camera as much as they can.
Right. You're still the figurehead.
Yeah. And actually, so that's an interesting point. That was one of the big things that I wanted out of the company. I was tired of being the figurehead. So I was tired of people saying, oh, call Steven, instead of saying, hey, call WIT. So we spent years getting me away from being the figurehead of the company. And so now when I'm kind of coming back in, we're very consciously not making me the figurehead. So even though I'll still build some of the relationships, we have some better clarity on how do we build a relationship with WIT, not with Steven. And so we're bringing in a couple more people to kind of be faces of the company. And we're bringing in a lot more of our, just the rest of our staff to also share information about what's going on in the industry and marketing, so that now it's this more cohesive WIT brand and the faces of WIT than just Steven on video all the time. Because I don't want to get back in the same position in a year and be miserable.
Well, and I mean, I enjoy it anyway. Like as far as like the YouTube channels and things like that I follow, it's more fun when there's multiple characters and like,
Yeah.
or like, I mean, the characters, but they're real people. But
Yeah.
like it's like for example, like Dave Ramsey's channel, there's like 3 or 4 different people they kind of cycle through, and like Dave Ramsey's like the main guy. But sometimes I get tired of him, and I want to hear from like the young guy or the lady or like the African American man. I just want like something different. And I imagine that maybe even just as far as like the people's personalities in general, like some people might gravitate towards this person whose expertise is this, or who would rather talk about that, or just their mannerisms are better. Like, I mean, it's probably just better in general. And it feels like just from the outside looking in, like when it's just one person, I wonder like, well, what if something happened to him, right? Or what if he got bored, or what if he quit, or what if he just one day woke up on the wrong side of the bed and closed his business? What if there's more of like a rotation or a cycle or a team? Then you're like, okay, like if he quit, everything would keep on going.
Yeah. Yeah. There's this interesting cycle that I draw, like, especially when I coach younger businesses. There's this cycle around, like, you kind of named something like this in line with this earlier, but like you have, the creation of a company, right? Year and month zero. And then you have this building or this infant stage, right? And in the infant stage, the owner and the business identity are basically the same, right? You know, I mean, it's the business takes on basically the owner's identity. It takes on their personality. The owner's the one driving the bus, a lot of times doing all of the work. Then you get a couple of employees and you start to grow a little bit, but you're still, you know, it's still an infant. It can't live on its own without you as the owner. If you went away, sales would fall off, marketing would fall off, the deliverable would fall off for the most part. So you're still growing that team. So you still have to take care of the infant, right? You got to feed it all the time. It can only, you know, both of us have new kids, right? So the infant can't do anything, right? It just has to be fed and cared for all the time. So that's like the first 5 years. Then after about, you know, depending on how fast you're growing, 3 years to 7 years, it starts to get into a little bit more into the teenage years where it wants to have its own identity. And so you have to, at that point, like if you draw this on a curve, at the top of the curve is where it starts to split. And so you've got to be able to split the owner's identity and the business identity and allow the business to start taking on a little bit of an identity of its own. Now you're still coaching it and guiding it just like you would a teenager. It's going to make mistakes. You've got to empower leadership and give them the opportunity to kind of, you know, find their own way. And then you as the owner have to also make sure that you know what your identity is, because you don't want your identity to be stuck in the business forever, because then you're unhappy. You don't even know who you are. You don't get to do any of the fun stuff that you want in life. You're too tied to it. So it splits off around that like 3 to 7 year type time frame. And what happens if you don't allow that to split? You actually start coming down the bottom side of the other curve. So you've seen it, like, you know, 20-year-old business where the owner is still first one in the door, last one out the door, you know, still micromanages every single thing, still knows every single client, talks to every single client. But it actually keeps the business from growing. So it starts coming down the back of the other curve if you don't allow it to start to actually split off. And that's when you get somebody that's been in the same business for 30 years running it, and they're for the most part miserable. And I'll call most people out, most people that say, oh, you know, but I love my business and I love my team and I love being there every day. Like maybe like 0.1% that's actually true, but I call BS on that. Most of it is just because you don't think that there's actually another way, and you've just programmed yourself to think that, oh, I got to be there every day or something's going to fall apart. Like, and you didn't take that risk in the early stages to actually start to separate your identity from the business identity, and they just became one, and you actually stagnated the growth potential of your business and the freedom of your life.
That's really deep to think about, because you always hear about how important it is to like build a team and remove yourself from the business and all those things, but you only hear about it in terms of like one moment in time, right? Like, I'm so
Yeah.
busy, there's paper stacked piled high, there's like stuff all over the desk, and but you don't think in terms of like what you're saying of like you will hold back your business, you'll hold back yourself, you'll hold back the people that are working for you. But and it's because at that crucial time, like you're saying, when the curve is, if you do nothing or you do the more what you're doing, it'll go back down. And there's like kind of the lift off point, like when the spaceship like gets free of the gravity well of the planet or something like
Yeah.
that. And yeah, and that's really powerful, but also like really scary stuff. And it's also good because like for so many years, especially like the early on years, I heard so much of like, I don't know, guilt projection of people saying like, well, you should hire early, they say, right? And sometimes I'm like, well, can I hire, but also like add in my own gasoline? That way I can like, do everything I can. And so that part's reassuring that like, early on, we can't help it. We need to put our own force and energy into it. But you're saying that at a certain point, if you don't take action when the curve is about to shift back down, then you're going to end up in a place you don't want to be, which is the sameness, which is the monotony that you were trying to escape in the first place by not doing 9 to 5, by being an entrepreneur business owner. So
Yeah,
it's
you might
really
as
deep
well,
stuff to think about.
at that point, you might as well have just stayed at a company and been an employee, because your life would probably actually be better, right? Like I read this stat somewhere, and I don't remember the stat, so this is definitely not it, but it was a very high stat, something like 80 to 90%, somewhere in there, percent of business owners never make more than they would have working for somebody else, but yet they put in like double the amount of time. So at the end of a life, they would have had a bigger retirement, more money, and have worked less if they would have just worked somewhere else. And they most likely would have been happier if they could have just accepted their ego, or accepted the fact and let their ego go that they work for somebody else, right? Most of it's ego. Like, think about how many people are like, look at a job and look at their manager or boss and like, dude, I can do this better than that, right? And most people can't, but they think they can because they don't see the whole big picture. That's why a lot of people start a company, and they don't have the self-awareness to actually say, okay, why am I actually doing this? Like, dude, if you just want like stability and the ability to earn more income and a little bit more freedom and creative freedom, you can get all of that at a job if you're just good at your job, and work to find the right company for you and be an entrepreneur at a business. So you're not having to deal with all this other crap that goes with it. Like, entrepreneurs are insane. Like, we're crazy, right? Like, we're gluttons for punishment, and we're just a little bit crazy. So I don't even remember where I was going with all this, but I guess the point is that, make these decisions consciously when it comes to business. And yeah, don't go the wrong way just because you think that you should run a business, and don't follow the back of that curve all the way into the ground, where now you've got, you work 7 days a week for 30 years and you really didn't make that much more money, and you just ended up with a lot of stress and a lot of excuses not to actually live your life in a different way that you wanted to.
It seems like you said there's the ego, and there's like the stubbornness too, right? There's
Yeah.
and almost like not wanting to face reality. And I mean, and that's kind of a scary place to be, of like doing that comparison of like, well, I did my business, but if I did almost the same line of work for someone else, but I just applied all that creative output towards someone else's business, then I'm making more that way. And it's like I got discouraged a couple years ago when I read something about something like the ideal way to make money, like the way to max out is like to be a telemarketer or something, and like learn as much telemarketing as you can, and just like spend all day long on the phone doing this thing you hate, and pile up a bunch of money, and then like put it in an index fund. And I guess mathematically someone wrote some article of like, that's the way to like just really get a bunch of the commission and get a bunch of money that way. But it sounds terrible, right? It sounds like
Yeah.
learning a skill you hate, and day in and day out, just to, I guess, tough it out for X number of years to have a pile of money. And like, money is really important, but I mean, it isn't freedom also important, and also kind of having that personal growth. And so, yeah, there's so much to think about, and to like revisit, and to kind of just always be aware of. So is there a secret to having all this kind of awareness? Is it a matter of like just having that free time, or that quiet time, or like, how do you come across some of these revelations you've been having?
I would say for me, it's meditation, right? Like, taking the time to quiet your mind. And when you quiet your mind every single day, now you can become more aware of what you're actually thinking about. So daily meditation practice and journaling. I journal a ton and have for just over 10 years. And what I'll do is I'll just journal, what am I thinking about? And so by doing that process, I'm learning, oh wow, like, I'm thinking about this. Like, a lot of us will write, like, I don't know, we'll write a problem or something that we think we want to solve, right? Like, when we go journal, it's so funny. Like, I try to teach people to journal, and they're like, well, what do I write about? I'm like, I don't know. What are you thinking about right now? They're like, I'm not thinking about anything. Like, I don't know what I'm thinking about. What should I be thinking about? I'm like, okay, if the average human has 60,000 thoughts a day, you've probably heard those scientific studies, somewhere between 45,000 and 60,000 thoughts a day. I'm pretty sure that in the same amount of time that we said, I don't know what to journal about, you had like 6 other thoughts. And so there's this awareness that starts to come out when you start journaling, and you start to be really honest with yourself, and just say, wow, right now I'm thinking about, I don't know what to journal about. And then I start to think about, gee, I wonder if what I write here, somebody else is going to read. And I wonder if if I let the cat out this morning, and I wonder if I left the stove on. Like, your mind will start to go down the path if you just let it. And so just writing what you're thinking about, it's irrelevant what it is, right? Like, it doesn't matter how dumb it may seem. The practice of just starting to do that will bring a deeper level of self-awareness. And then at least for me, when I start journaling now I have these really cool thoughts come up. I have these really cool ideas that have been sitting there, like just marinating in my subconscious. And so after a meditation, I've quieted my mind. I'm not really worried about much, and really cool, interesting things can come up. And look, some days journaling is challenging, right? It's like literally I'll just write on the page, like, I'm mad that I'm journaling right now. Like, this is stupid. This is a waste of time. Like, what are you doing? Like, you should be working right now. Like, you should be working, even though you're saying that you don't think you should be working because this is important. Like, I'll literally just have a conversation with myself in a journal. And then now, after you start to do that more, you will bring that into your day. And so now when you have a conversation with somebody, let's say a challenging conversation at work, right? Instead of especially if you're an owner, right, and you're talking to an employee and they're saying something that you don't like. Well, now what you can actually start to do is, instead of just being like, no, you're doing this wrong, you got to do it this way. Now you can actually say, wait, let me ask some more questions. Like, why is this person feeling frustrated? There's got to be a reason to it, right? And so now you can start to ask some more questions and actually approach it from a standpoint of, wait, what am I thinking? Okay, I'm mad because I should have told them actually with more clarity what to do. So I'm really mad at myself, but I just don't want to admit it. So you can start to have this next level. Because I mean, if there's one skill that I could inject people with, um, that I think is the most impactful, it would be self-awareness. Basically, just the ability to think about what you're thinking about. And then the next layer is feelings, right? Using feelings as a guide. They're an amazing guide to deeper stuff, but just the ability to think about what you're thinking about.
Well, and even the way you describe it, it's like it seems like our real thoughts are like we're not listening, and it seems like it
Oh,
takes just that journaling habit to then begin to like finally tune into it. I mean, it's like when I learned about like typefaces and kerning and fonts and things, then when I would see like a poster or something on TV and I'd see text, I'd be like, oh well, that's such and such font. Or like you take a music class and you listen to a song, you're like, oh, now I hear the layers, or like this is, they're using this musical technique, and it's like it was always there, but then we weren't tuned into it. And it's like you're mentioning about like all these thoughts we have during the day, and there's something on. I mean, it's like this show of ours. It's like just incorrectly quoting these things that we know are sort of true, and we're on the right track. But I heard something that was like 95% of our thoughts are just like repeated thoughts or something along. Like
yeah.
it was a crazy high number, and I totally believe that, especially if we're not tuned into just that creativity faucet, or like where the new thoughts come from. It's so easy to just get stuck in that same old loop. And I mean, we all know people like that. We know people that are so predictable that, if you said this, they'd respond this way, and if you mentioned
Yeah.
this topic, it would remind them of that thing. And it's like, who wants to be that? That's not a life. That's really boring. So there's just
Yeah.
so much to think about. And so to help people kind of get on the right track, I mean, is there a place people should go to keep this conversation going if their minds have almost literally been blown by all the deep topics that we've been talking about, and they want to get more from you? Where should they be going?
Geez, man, probably the best place to find out like whatever I'm thinking about is just my Facebook page. So I post a ton of little videos. I'll post stuff that I'm thinking about. I'll pose questions to people, just to get the juices flowing. Uh, Most of it's on Facebook. I've finally been starting to write some blogs again, so those will start to come out. But Facebook is the best place. Like, I shoot a ton of little video on there, and if somebody wants to reach out, they can reach out to me there. I love having conversations about this stuff. I mean, if somebody says, wow, this just blew my mind and it can change my life, what the hell do I do next? And you just have nowhere else to go, you know, hell, I don't care. Shoot you a message to get to me, or just find me on Facebook. You can put my email address in the thing. Uh, but I'm more than happy to talk about it, because this is fun for me. Like, this is one of the most fulfilling things. I love coaching business owners and other people, and like even our team, on this type of thing. Because I think if we can help individuals live lives of less stress, more awareness, and make more conscious choices, then they're going to live a better life. If they're living a better life, they're going to turn around and serve others. If they turn around and serve others, eventually that's how you change the world, one person at a time, living a slightly better, more conscious life, making better choices for the big collective. You just change the world. Now, I don't know how to exactly do that, but I just figured let's just start doing it one person at a time.
Well, maybe with enough journaling, you'll get there, right? As far as this idea
Oh, dude.
of like you wake up and now you're making conscious decisions, and everyone else sees how you've changed, and now you've created a whole movement of just like waking up all these people to this conscious life.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, I mean, I just noticed like I'm wearing this Conscious Mavericks t-shirt today,
Wow.
and that's pretty much exactly what this is. It's like this fun little brand that I've been playing with. And I just wear the shirt around. So people are like, oh, like, what's that? Like Conscious Mavericks? I'm like, oh, dude, like, you ready? Like, get a beer. Let's have a conversation. Um, so, but yeah, you nailed it. Like, just living the life that you want is probably one of the best ways to serve others, because you're right, they'll see it and they'll start to ask, or they'll start to follow. Like, just live your best life.
Well, I think I have been unconsciously noticing your Conscious Mavericks T-shirt. I saw it and I was like, oh, is that like an apparel brand, or is that his, or is that someone else? And then it went out of my mind and kept going back in and coming back out, and so it did its job, right? The
Awesome, man.
unconsciously noticing the Conscious Mavericks, and if you two out there in podcast land think that any, or even better, all of this is a good idea, and you know that your life could be and should be and will be different, then add Stephen Christopher on Facebook. And is there a Facebook page, or do you feel like plugging Wit or anything else like that?
Dude, I mean, you should just be able to search Stephen Christopher on Facebook. I mean, Robert, I'll send you the link so you can put it in the show notes if you want. And then, yeah, I mean, plugging Wit, like, I don't know, Wit is an amazing digital marketing agency that we're bringing this type of stuff into the culture um, of the business so that we can better impact the community. I mean, if you need digital marketing and you own a big home service company or know somebody that works in that space, we'd love to talk to them. But ultimately, like, if anything, if you want to watch what we do with Wit, like on our social media and stuff, this is the similar message that we're trying to get out there into the world, not just about marketing. Like, we're trying to make a bigger impact with the company than just digital marketing.
Then just going through the motions. Well, okay then.
Yep.
Then witdelivers.com if you're interested in that. 800-444-8957. And then, well, more importantly, add Stephen Christopher on Facebook. That way you can get into these deep thoughts and not just be struggling with the day-to-day, the mechanics, because those always change. Every 2 days, Google has some update to their algorithm with artificial intelligence and apps and platforms making things so easier. I mean, what's more important for us mere mortal humans is the bigger picture. And with your bigger picture, and with what you and your business, which is the expression of yourself, turns into and becomes, at good or bad, hopefully good. And so add Stephen Christopher on Facebook to get on the right track and to get that regular dosage and supply of positivity and wisdom. Stephen Christopher on Facebook. Anything to say as we wrap up, wind down here, Stephen?
No, man, I love it, dude. I appreciate you having me back on. I appreciate what you're doing and spreading this message to people. Just all the messages that you're giving them and helping them with. Like, this is fantastic. Like, just keep doing this. Thank you.
Well, likewise, you're fantastic, and you keep doing what you're doing.
Awesome, man.